Right guys, welcome down to Wishaw Golf Club and the Andy Gorman Putting Academy, and this is Andy Gorman. How are we doing?
Yes. Great to see you again,
okay. So we've got kind of planned here so many putting videos which are going to be coming over the next few weeks, of which this is the first. And as you can see, quite a lot of technology here at the moment. I feel a little bit like the robo putter, but so this is going to be a putter fitting.
It's going to be putter fitting.
And all the rest of it. Now, I've never actually used a SAM Lab before.
SAM Lab's great because, number one, we are getting 28 parameters of the putting stroke, basically putter measurements that take place during the stroke. So we're not measuring so much you at this stage in what you're doing. We're not measuring the ball, but we are measuring the movements of the putter which you're in control of during the stroke. So we will then be able to look at that on the report on the big screen.
Fantastic.
After the session.
And this, I mean, Andy is a short game putting specialist. This is his kind of big passion. This is what he's renowned for, really. And I'm super excited to kind of do it because I've never been this in-depth into a putter fitting before. So I'm super excited to see what this actually comes up with.
Okay, the first thing we're going to do is just calibrate the SAM triplet, which is connected to the putter, to the base unit. We're going to use a laser. We're going to aim that just at the left edge of the hole for you, and then we will get you set up. So that will get us going. There we are.
Love lasers. Lasers are good. Anytime you get a laser
out.
out.
Set up there, Pete, as if you're going to put the laser into the hole. There we are.
So I'm lining up the putter face here to the back of this.
Still for me. And there we go. Little tick tock. And we're away, we're ready to go. So we're going to hit 5 putts. Okay. And that's going to allow us then to get a basic average of what you're doing. And if we can go from the same spot so we know exactly that we're lining up and going to strike it, hopefully out the sweet spot.
I was going to say, these those practice putts you can see behind the hole, those were almost definitely not me to begin with.
Given the fact that it fails to start, that was a good start.
Is that not day done? Are we finished now?
We could finish right now, but I think we could do it a little bit more day. Just to show that it wasn't a fluke.
Go! Go!
Save your embarrassment there, and we can go with a few more. Just keep going.
It was online. It was online.
Pretty good there.
That snuck in, that one. That was I was watching that all the way. I wasn't turning away early.
And again, like that side of the hole.
I tell you what, I love that side of the hole. That's the best side. Do you want one more?
And we can have a look at the data that we've collected.
That's a bit short. Oh,
yeah,
and pushy.
A little bit right. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of tend to be favouring that side, don't I?
Absolutely. And we've now got a report to look at, so we can have a look at that on the big screen.
So if you guys are ever interested in actually getting a putter fitting, this is the in-depth type of kind of information that you want, and well, this looks very...
Well, this is aim, and if we have an issue with the aim, then we're going to have to apply some compensations during the stroke. Now we could be aiming a little bit to the right as we are here, 2.5 degrees roughly. There's a few, it gets progressively more as you go through. Apart from a slight one out here, it seems to be a pattern that your tendency during the stroke then is to have to close that club face down.
To actually get it back to target.
More rotation through the stroke. So, you know, you're in good company because Tiger starts with his club face open. Well, the data that we saw from a few years ago now.
You old smooth talking, buttering me up.
But he does manage to square the club face around 98% of the time. So, Pete, I'm not so sure that you're in that category at this point, but we'll see.
Buttering me up, and there's the hammer.
It's not bad. It's not bad. I'll tell you what.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah.
So this is impact.
This is impact. This is the critical bit, really.
So I've gone from 1.6 open to 0.6 open.
And, you know, that's pretty good going.
Okay.
So, you know, we've come down, we've rotated that club face down quite a bit, and the path of the club's pretty straight too. So, you know, basic form, what we're looking at here is around 80% of the data for the golf ball's direction will come from the club face,
Okay.
and about 20% from the path of the club. Now, I would say it's probably closer to a 90-10 ratio personally, and we've seen that kind of data as is backing up more and more information as we collect it. So, if we take the data that's sitting on the screen here, you're going to be hitting your putts approximately half a degree right of where you were aiming.
Okay.
So, not bad. You're going to be making 12, 15 foot putts.
Yeah, it would
reasonably well, as long as the tendency is right, as long as we're not looking at a left to right putt.
Yeah. Well, and that will make perfect sense why they were just clinging onto the right edge,
exactly.
kind of over that distance.
About that half a degree out.
Fantastic.
So, this is the overview. So top view now, we can see the length of your backswing versus the length of the forward swing. Quite a lot of forward swing movement.
Okay.
And not something that I would necessarily see, as a good part of what we, I'd like to see a slightly shorter follow through than we've got here. There's really no reason for all this movement past the ball.
Right, okay.
So if we can shorten the amount of follow through and make a more concise stroke, then hey, you'd be like Tiger Woods again, so.
Oh, God.
But on the flip side of this, the consistency score, whatever you're doing, the score's good, because the path direction is really good, 98%. The consistency, you're doing it really well at 91%. So the thing is that you can rely on what you're doing and ultimately then calibrate your, sort of aim factors and your needs for your putting stroke accordingly.
Okay.
We all have certain bias, so that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's your sort of golfing DNA really, and we'd want to enhance that. Know what it is. This is what we're getting from SAM PuttLab today, and once you know what it is, you know that maybe you just need to aim a fraction further left. Especially on the left to right putt, so that your tendency is to have that face slightly open at impact.
Okay.
But you do it really well.
Thank you.
Interesting. Now, first putt, 11.63 millimetres towards the toe. I could say, just subtly, you missed the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is highlighted by this grey area here. That represents around 7 millimetres in total, 3.5 each side from the sweet spot.
And this is really one of the key areas of putting. If you are missing the sweet spot, that's going to affect massively the pace and control of that kind of putt.
And for me, this would determine whether or not we'd go for a putter that was either slightly larger across the face, like we're seeing with some putters these days. Seymour have come out with a range of larger headed putters. We've got one in which we'll have a look at a little bit later. But essentially, this isn't bad. This, you can get away with pretty much any type of, standard blade type putter or Anza style putter, heel and toe weighted putter, which tends to be your favourite. I wouldn't suggest you need to go for a mallet putter at this stage, but if you were struggling to find the sweet spot, then I would definitely suggest
that'd be an option.
That would be an option. I think the first putt was a small anomaly and has thrown the number out.
We'll focus on the fun ones. We'll focus on the good ones.
So the last four aren't too bad and on the edge of the sweet spot and actually fairly close in most cases. But consistency scores come down obviously because you've got this big error on the first putt.
On the right one.
But we've measured 5 honest putts, and I think that's more important than sort of removing the first one because it wasn't so clever.
Okay.
All right, they're 5 honest putts. Honest, Pete.
That's what I'm known as.
Right. Again, the side view. So imagine now your right foot and your left foot are in these positions here, or slightly more in this position, and then we can see that we've got a forward swing that is quite well extended. It's fairly well balanced. If we sort of measured it off at this angle here, you'd see that the end of the backswing and the end of the follow through, if it stopped there, would be reasonably similar heights. Maybe twice as high on the way through, but the ball is further forward in his stance, and subsequently that would be one of the reasons why that would happen. But you can also see that there's an awful lot of wasted energy or wasted movement that really just we don't need. So if we can make that putting stroke more concise, there's a reason why this is taking place. And I would be inclined to suggest that maybe the backswing's a little too short or it's a little bit too slow. It's taking too long for that to happen.
So it could be more of a pace of stroke issue that's actually causing that extended through swing.
If I was stabbing in the dark and looking at these sort of numbers, I would suggest that maybe getting the ball to the hole can be a problem at times.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
maybe under pressure you'll ease it to the hole rather than run it at the hole.
I wouldn't argue with that. I'd say I am more of a try and drop it in the front edge
Okay.
than hit it into the back of the hole.
Which arguably would be the narrowest part of the hole. So, small D-loft, which is absolutely fine, and we've got a predicted launch here. Now, SAM PuttLab doesn't measure the golf ball, so it is stating, it is predicting the launch. It's not saying that this is factual, but there's an awful lot of evidence to suggest that this will be reasonably accurate.
There's a lot of solid math going into this.
I'm pretty sure there's an awful lot of math to this, but essentially here you've got a very small upstroke, which I quite like. A little bit of upstroke or fairly level into the ball is good. We've got loft on the putter, which is absolutely fine. You're de-lofting it just a fraction, so we've got around 2.5 degrees of loft at the point of impact. So if I was fitting you for a putter, then basically the loft is good around 3 degrees.
Okay, cool.
We could go a fraction lower, 2.5 would still give you a reasonable number. And it's a little bit spread around here. We can separate these, so we can actually break them all down so we know exactly what's going on. So now they're all into singles, and we can see that 0.6 D-loft, we just look at the D-lofts, 0.1 there, 0.7, no D-loft at all, and 0.2. So we've got a little bit of variety, and we'd want to firm that up with consistency.
Get that a little bit more consistent.
So that we are then a little bit more predictable in terms of how the golf ball moves away from the putter face and doesn't launch too high, because I think one of the biggest problems, you don't launch it down into the ground, we wouldn't want to see that bouncing, but we do want the golf ball to move fairly level across the ground, and if it does that, then it will very quickly roll. Imagine that the golf ball, if we have a look on the screen, the golf ball, the energy of the golf ball wants to be moving in a fairly forward direction, and then the friction on the base of the ball as the ball rolls across the surface or skids across the surface will become more significant than the actual air mass at the top and will cause the ball to roll. So the science behind the ball rolling is get it rolling, get it moving as quickly as possible, as close to the ground as possible, and then the friction of the grass and the ball will actually cause it to roll end over end anyway. So as long as the face is reasonably square at impact, we won't be starting it offline. So if we can get that forward push, the skid factor in effect, nice and low to the ground, that will really help to get a good effective roll through the ball. So now we're on the rotation screen and we can see we have our first 100% score.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive. Now just to explain the difference between score and consistency, I think it's fairly evident, but the consistency is how well you do it between each of the putts.
Yes.
The score is based on the parameters of SAM PuttLab.
Yeah.
So I may not necessarily agree with their score factors and what they would determine to be their score factors. That's not a critique of SAM, it's just where their baseline is.
Yeah,
That's perfectly fine because it's good to have a baseline. As you can see on the screen here, we've got some fairly broad sort of block areas of where it's good to have your scoring, and clearly we can see at 20.2 you're right in the middle of the block for the rotation rate at impact. So, nice and low, down at 20 degrees or so for closure ratio through the ball. We're measuring a 10-foot putt, so we'd expect a certain amount of rotation based on the length of the stroke.
Yep.
As we remember the top view, we could see the length of your backswing wasn't quite as long as the dotted lines were to start. We'll just flick back to that so that we can clearly see it. You see that the end of your backswing stops just before the dotted lines referred to as SAM PuttLab lengths stroke. So if we go back to rotation, had it have gone back to there, I'd have expected to see around 6.5 to 7 degrees of rotation. As it stopped short, around about 3/4 of that, you're pretty much on the rotation rate, so that's a good rate.
Good.
So 4.2 on average through the strokes. On the way through, though, I would expect to see that number increase, and this would suggest that, in fact, the putter face is open to path and open to the length of the stroke as well through the ball. So essentially what we've got to work on is that rotation, and actually if you think about it, the face has a tendency to be a little bit open at the point of impact.
Indeed, yeah.
Those are rooms for improvement as we go through. So I wouldn't be suggesting that we need to change putter style or anything like that to actually improve that, but we can try a different putter going forward and see whether or not it has.
See if it has a difference, yeah. This is all fantastic stuff, this, Andy, has to be said.
Okay, so what we've got here now is, over the 5 putts, there's a reasonable consistency in terms of path. And you can see here, just below the coloured lines, maybe not shown too clearly on the screen, but you know, there's 5 coloured lines in there. There is a black line that runs as the baseline through the centre, that's your target. And we're looking for the rotation of the club face in relation to the path of the club. That relationship there is fairly close. There's a red line here which indicates, you can see as we go through, the club face when it's red is in the open phase or open to path phase.
So it's got that tendency to be open throughout the through stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, as we're coming into impact, if the path of the club was starting to move across, we would need to leave the face open in order to get the ideal response for the golf ball, its direction to the target. So, you know, sometimes when we look at this page, and you know, I really like this page, it tells me a lot of what's going on. The key really for me is the path of the club as close to that target line as we can make it. And, you know, it is. It stays underneath the target line as well, so it's very much an in to square to in stroke. A typical good solid arc stroke putt.
Awesome.
And again, the face angle just marginally open at the point, on 1 or 2 at the point of impact.
Point of impact.
Again, we can separate this down, we can single it out, and we'll just do a quick flick through. You can see this, the last one here was just slightly open. Very square through this putt here, the 4th putt, really good lines going on here. I mean, this looks great.
I have to look back. I hope I hold that one.
You did. And if you didn't, you come up short. You did hold it. Just a couple that are fraction open. So we're looking at around 1 degree before it shows up.
Okay.
And then you kind of guiding it through. You're right on the edge of it being slightly open through the phase. Again, similar thing. Had it been close to path, we'd have seen blue lines in there.
And that's the one thing that we've not seen throughout all these putts. No kind of real closure in backstroke or through stroke.
The tendency for you to pull putts, you know, isn't there. And actually, from your posture and from the very quick overview that I've been able to see so far, I wouldn't have suggested that that was an issue either. Really like the way that you stand to the golf ball. And, you know, there's really not a lot of major issues going on in the stroke, so maybe it's something to do with the mind as you don't hold enough putts. We'll talk about that in a bit.
Yes, we will do a whole video on that one, I think.
Now, this is great. You know, one of the things that we see with consistency in putting is, you know, fairly solid lines. So you've got 5 putts measured here and a fairly consistent balance to those putting patterns. So the movement that we've got, the acceleration, the factors, speed factors that determine the ball getting to the hole are pretty consistent. So, you know, I'm quite impressed with that.
Thank you.
We can see this is where we start to see issues with regards to putting yips. If there are movements, significant movements taking place, then we can see
you'll see big squiggles all over the place,
crossing all over. So we generally know. But that's the beauty about when you see a putter movement using SAM PuttLab, you can actually see what it's doing. And you know, you can see from here the consistency factors. You know, nice, I like it, it's good. This suggests a little earlier that maybe the backswing takes a little bit too much time.
A little bit too long.
So, you know, yeah, a little bit longer than it needs to be. And that suggests then that, you know, the brain's already aware of what's going on. For me, it's very simple. The brain already knows what's taking place. If it knows that the backswing's maybe a little bit too slow, it's taking too long, then it has a tendency to not overly accelerate, but actually to keep the putter moving further on through the ball. And maybe, you know, at some point during, you know, your early phases of golf, you were told to accelerate the putter, or you know, make sure the putter follows through long enough, and that became part of what you've taken into
more of an ingrained habit. Yeah, absolutely.
But you would improve. You know, I don't dwell too long on these pages here on the basis that, you know, number one, this improves as skill improves. So if you become more aware of the things that you're looking to do, then that becomes a skill factor that you'll work on. So it's things that we'll work on, you know, in a little while with regards to pace that will help you to actually understand this a little bit more.
Okay.
Okay. So that would conclude, you know, your analysis. We've sort of whipped through it really quickly for purposes of video, but essentially here what we're looking at is all the movements of the putter has been measured into 28 parameters of the putting stroke, and that's your SAM PuttLab report. I will very quickly switch it over to the print profile, and we will have a look and see what your actual score was.
Okay, so overall, what's my score?
Overall, 75% your overall rating. So technique's pretty good. 87% is a nice high score, obviously. Consistency is also pretty good, but you can see the timing elements, the length of that, or the time of that backswing, you know, has really affected the timing elements of it.
Right, okay.
So if we can improve the timing, we haven't really got a lot of work to do on the technique, although we can shorten the follow-through a little bit. Essentially, if we can improve that timing, just make that backswing a little bit more brisk, the follow-through will then become shorter on the basis that there's a bit more speed around, and the brain will already switch that off and go, right, okay, we'll just make a little bit shorter follow-through because we don't need to make it. Essentially then, the technique should improve, nudging it up, timing will improve, and so your overall score potentially, I would say, is fairly close to high 80s to low 90s, just off the method they're using right now.
Awesome.
So I'd expect to see that, given a little bit of practice. I know you don't have as much time to practice as you'd like, such a busy man, but you know, I would expect you to be able to get a mid-80s without any major work.
Got to make time. Awesome. Right, let's have a little bit of a practice at that. Let's see if we can do it. Okay, so that's the first part of the fitting and kind of session over with. So identified that the stroke's not too bad, but it's more of that timing, more of that pace, more of the actual using that to add a little bit more consistency into the stroke and hopefully getting it to the hole a little bit better, rather than that kind of short right putt that would be the weak shot.
My concern, as I said to you to start with, was the lack of length in the backswing, but more importantly, the time it takes you to make the backswing. It's too deliberate.
Yes.
What I like folks to try and understand is, you know, what we're trying to get is a feel for, you know, sort of just becoming instinctive.
Yes.
You know, over your putts. So, you know, what we've got here is the map that I came up with a few years ago now, endorsed by Seymour, and essentially what we've got is the rotation rate and the path of the club through the sweet spot. Now, it looks like an arc on the mat, and you know, I can tell you that it's not necessarily a curve, but a straight line, even though it looks like an arc.
Yeah.
But actually, to quickly explain that, the putting stroke will rise and fall. We saw that on the SAM PuttLab report, that you've got a really good rise and fall and then rise again through the stroke. The putter, though, moves up an incline. The pendulum of the putting stroke isn't one that's perpendicular.
Yep.
So it can't just look like a pendulum as you would see on the grandfather clock. It's inclined. And it's the incline, as the putter moves up as it moves back, it moves inside.
Necessarily moves inside because of the...
So if I showed you very clearly here, we have a vertical hula hoop and then tipped it sideways, we would actually see that it moves inside somewhat. It's still straight, it's still a perpendicular, it's straight, but as it moves inside and we take the lie of the club, the putter will move inside the path and then follow through inside. It should follow the natural tendencies or the natural pattern of movement through and around the hoop. So it's a circle at the end of the day, that's what we need to understand. So the idea here is that we use the lines that are on the mat represent the club face as a measuring tool for you to practice your backswing and your forward swing.
Okay.
So this is devised primarily for the 10 to 12 foot putt.
Perfect.
And if you can take the putter back, that's it. And then through, we want to go through at the same rate. So as we come through, we should stop at the forward position, so through to here.
And so for me, this is more about getting the pace a lot more even between...
Pace of your stroke, Okay, so again we showed the length of the backswing was relatively short in comparison to
the follow-through.
Okay. So now we're seeing the increase of the backswing with an increase of the follow-through, and hence you hit the golf ball further.
It is an interesting one, because this is certainly something that I and kind of many people will do in their putting stroke to try and be super deliberate in the backswing and the through swing, just to try and get the technique kind of perfect. not perfect, but try and get the feeling of it being super.
You're right, and I think one of the things, you know, we're becoming more and more aware of what the putting stroke is, or you know, what we should be doing with the putting stroke. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we have is that we are inclined to practice, but are we much better? The ratio there was much closer to a 1-to-1, which is what I'd be looking for. Now, a 1-to-1 ratio, imagine the putter moves 10 inches back, it would then move 10 inches through the ball. So there'd be more 1-to-2, so the acceleration rates, this is where Pete's inconsistency for distance control really shows up. The backswing rate and the follow-through rate. So I want you to stop here on the way through. So it becomes a little bit, the follow-through becomes a little bit more concise. The backswing is fine, the distance that you're taking it back. Okay, there we are.
It is a weird one, because actually, probably looking at this on camera, the actual pace probably wouldn't look that much different. It feels ridiculously quick.
And you're still giving me a reasonable tap on the fingers.
It feels ridiculously quick.
To break my fingers, don't worry, but you know, and you just really should be going through to touch my fingers, because there's way too much pace. That's 4 or 5 feet past the hole.
It's super.
Cuts on going on there, so.
It is very strange to kind of get that sensation of actually having that kind of quicker, well, more even pace stroke, you'd probably put it like.
That's right. So what's interesting is it is a bit rough there. What's interesting is that the backswing is becoming shorter.
Yes.
It's becoming more of a wrap through the ball.
Yeah.
The idea is we get the feel that we can take the putter back and then cut much better. Now you've still got plenty of pace to hit the putt.
Yes.
But it's more controlled, it's more balanced.
It is one of these things. I've never been a hard hitter of a putt, if that kind of makes sense. I've always just tried to drop it in the front door.
That's better, although the path went a little bit out. Caught hold of the block.
Okay.
Just try that again. Better. Now, interesting how you're holding the putter face open as you're going through. So as the putting stroke becomes more, now we did see that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Being open to path. So as the pace becomes better balanced, your tendency to hold the club face now has become a little bit more obvious.
Yes.
So in terms of, you know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's not a great thing, because we don't want to hit the putter, you know, with the putts with the face open.
No.
But at the same time, pace control is a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, what I want you to do here is just humour me.
Okay.
With a one-handed practice method. Now, we've seen Tiger do this many, many times. It's just the right hand. Okay, so all I want you to do is to just let the putter flow back and forward. Still plenty of pace, so you're strong in that right hand. Alright? But there's plenty of pace for you to be going on with. So we just need to control the follow-through pace. There we go, that's better. What we're looking for, Pete, is, you know, once we start to gain the control over the acceleration rates, then our tempo and our timing will improve for putts going forward. And this is the instinctiveness that I try to, you know, to get folk to understand, is that we're putting with instinct. Plenty of things that we would do. One of the biggest things that I talk about a lot is posture.
Yeah.
How to get good posture over the ball. That's a much better pace. Posture for me, you know, we've been taught for so long to get our eyes over.
Eyes over.
You know? And the problem with that is that we get very bent over, and from here, you'd never actually attempt to throw a ball from here. We'll talk about, you know, the fundamentals in another video, but, you know, if we can stand up nice and tall and use our natural position to stand and not bend over, then we're less inclined to use our hands, more inclined to use our body and our arms collectively. Good. We've talked a lot in the past about using our big muscles, you know, because we don't want the twitchy muscles involved. Perfectly agree. But essentially, if we're bent over, we're not using our big muscles, and these smaller muscles, the small twitch factors of our body will become more prevalent. So just being able to, if anything, I would get you to just stand a little bit taller, just get the arms to hang a little bit more freely, and then, you know, that will help to improve. What we've done here is highlight the need to work on this specifically, but actually you know, with a small posture change, a little bit taller, allowing your arms to hang and practice one-handed, you know, you will instinctively trigger those, you know, instincts, but you'll do that without even consciously being aware of it.
Fantastic.
And that's what we're looking for in putting. There's, you know, a few things that we've got to do before we putt. We've got to pick the line, figure out how hard we're going to hit it, maybe have a couple of practice strokes, then do it. That's enough work to be thinking about. During the stroke, we just want to get up there and hit it. So, you know, that's where instincts really need to kick in.
Awesome, I like it. Right, well, that it is. Honestly, I can't explain how probably similar it looks, but how different it feels. That actually kind of change, that change in acceleration there. It is a very, very kind of odd feeling, but it works. But it feels. Probably the best way to describe it feels a lot more kind of Snedeker-like as far as kind of like that pace and that kind of shortened, abbreviated backstroke. I know it looks nothing like that at all, but that's kind of almost kind of how it feels. Yeah. No, that's very, very interesting. Right, well, that is a putter fitting / kind of lesson, and I know it's kind of been quite a long video, but hopefully you enjoyed kind of watching the process and exactly what you should be looking for if you are having this really in-depth putting lesson. And obviously, you know, all the links to Andy and all the links to kind of the studio, they're all down in the description below, so please come and check him out. So Andy, thank you very much for that. So we've got lots of more videos kind of coming up, so please stay tuned over the next kind of few weeks. Loads of stuff coming up to help you improve your putting that a little bit more. Right guys, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, go into the description, follow all the kind of links to the social media platforms down there as well. Comment below, and we'll see you next time.